So we ended our last one talking about the displaced child becomes the entitled adult if all of those things are left unchecked and not accounted for. And I think that I want to step a bit further into this space of understanding what's happening. And this is in light of this conversation around whether or not Jay-Z should help Damon Dash. And I'm particularly interested in the black community, right? And again, this notion of black excellence. And I think that what tends to happen to us, the black experience in America and throughout the world, has been portrayed, and in most cases is true, as challenged, difficult, riddled with struggle, and so on, right? And we have this thing called black tax in the family where, because we are aware of someone's struggles and we are in proximity to that person, there is this belief or perception of entitlement that comes with that. And I didn't realize the significance of that until we were having a conversation this week about two men that are nearly 60 years old. One made some not so great fiscal decisions, the other one made some really good ones. And one person's fruit, they have plenty, and the other one not so much. And somehow, because they were in proximity to one another at some point, there is a belief that one person that has done well owes the other. And I think that this is important because one of the things that I've noticed about us, people in general, I think Ayanla talked about this before, and I'm starting to understand it more and more. You know, when you play a video game, that whenever you get to a certain checkpoint at the video game, if you can't beat that part, then you keep having to start over at that part, but you have less of whatever it is. And so, if you have like recovery gems, if you have tools, if you have like anything like that, any particular like strength, HP, if you will, right? All of that stuff disappears every time you have to start over. But every time you fail at this point, you have to start again. And I want this part to stand out simply because I think that a number of us get stuck at certain spaces in life and we don't take the time to reevaluate how we approach things so that we can get past this point and to the next checkpoint. Essentially, I'm realizing that there are a lot of adults, or a good amount of adults, that have had adverse experiences in their life and are stuck at the moment and the window of that adverse experience. So, social media, for instance, which is already filled with a bunch of teenagers, because I forget, like, I'm one of the old heads now. Like, I still can't believe I'm considered one of the adults, but I discount that I'm one of the adults, which is wild, along with the new kids that are showing up. Like the kids born in 2000 are 25 now. Nuts. But then you have these elders that became entertainers in their 20s, in their teens, and they've been doing it for a long time, but somehow, some way, they have not gotten past the point of childhood where they had this significant change. And while we want to look at extreme blessings as simply just a blessing and it's always a good thing, right? Like when you have a windfall, when you are suddenly on a record label and you have all of these money, all this money, you have all these resources, you have all this popularity, you have all of this center stage, you have the opportunity to live this life of grandiosity. And we never think about how difficult of a transition that is for the folks that have come from nothing, being in the space of stardom, star power, and excess. You have no capacity to actually handle what you have. You don't have the experience to handle what you have. You don't have people around you that have been to where you've been that can help you be better with your assets and your resources. And we don't ever think about it like that might be a little traumatic because we see trauma one sort of way. When trauma is actually an extreme of a particular experience. Like, for instance, I was reading about schizophrenia, and it is believed that schizophrenia is the excess production of dopamine. Huh. I said, everybody's chasing dopamine. Everybody wants to feel good. But suddenly it breaks. Suddenly it's too much. And so, what happens when it's not just that your brain is just overproducing dopamine on a chemical level, but you have a life experience that brings you to this state of euphoria that you almost don't believe that your life is real. When I tell you, and as a person, I get up and I look around, I experience life. I'll tell you too much of my business. I live on a complex that has a pool. It has been well into the 80s. And when I was a young kid, they used to call me a shark because I love the water. I go to a gym. I pay for a membership that has a sauna and a pool. Haven't used any of them because in my brain, there's a part of me that is discounting my value or telling me, like, you're doing too much, you got too much, you shouldn't be, you shouldn't. And I'm like, what is that about? Because there is something significant that happens when you go from you don't have it to now you have a lot of it. And what's even more difficult is that sometimes the people around you are not going in the same places that you are going. And they don't understand and they look at you like you're crazy when you say that damn, like this is a lot. This is a lot. Remember isolation to idolatry? They don't get it. They say that you're different now. You have access to this, you have access to that, and you become useful inadvertently because they look at it and say, well, my biggest problems is not having no money. So when you have money, you shouldn't have no problems, right? Mm, mm, that ain't true at all. That ain't true at all. But going back to that, realizing that there is an adjustment period for when you transition from having some things or having not many things to having some things and having a lot of things and having responsibilities and that lack of relatability, there's something that happens where you become detached and that isolation goes a bit further than you remember. And then suddenly, when you don't make yourself available to folks, when you don't share the fruit that you have, you become an enemy because you know their struggle. You know what's going on with them and you got it and you're not going to help them. And one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn in my life that there is a difference between empathy and empathizing versus enabling. Yeah, you see, because what happens is that while you are figuring out how to be a steward of your blessings, people don't want to contend with the beds that they've made. While you are figuring out how you can be a shepherd of your gift, there are people that are shepherding their egos. And that's a tough one because it comes in so many ranges, sizes, versions, relationship types. And you see it more and more. You see, I'm realizing that going back to this point of social media being filled with teens and teens or adults that are teens are stuck in teenage minds and so on, I'm realizing That this is how come we have this quick bubbling up of tearing down one another, because it's like, yeah, you should be down here with me. Oh, you got this because you see people of color and you see struggle and you see gangsters and you see like big talkers. But what happens to them folks that make it? And then when you see people make it and they crash and burn because they don't know how to use their resources, so they usually are okay for just a blip of time. But again, just reiterating and reliving that struggle kind of thing. And that's the tough part. And when people figure it out that you didn't expect to figure it out, you throw stones. And I think that that's tough, right? Like, so much so, I love Aaliyah. I think that she was taken way too soon and so on. But I remember when we were kids, people would call Aaliyah fast. Hmm. There was not a single person that was like, yeah, nah, she shouldn't have, she shouldn't have, no, they shouldn't have this, they should. It was everybody threw stones at her. I remember when I hit about 25, 26 years old, and I just went back to that. And I was like, yo, Aaliyah died at 22? I'm like, yo, why was all these niggas in her face? But lo and behold, it's not that people recognize Aaliyah because of her talent and so on. It's not that they had this shift organically because they believe in Me Too and all these other things. It's not about that. It's because if Aaliyah was still around, Beyonce wouldn't be where she's at. And it's like, wait a minute, what is happening? How did we get here? How did we get here? Because there's a version of us that cannot believe that some people that look like me beat the odds. There is a version of us that's been conditioned to not just see ourselves in like struggle and adversity, but to see money, resources, popularity, see that as a negative. Only bad people have money. Only bad people have an exit. And there's something to say about that, because that means you'll never not be chasing a bill, not be chasing your life in general. Like, you will never be objectively comfortable, because if you got enough, that means you did something wrong to get it. That's tough. I hope that we can change our mind on that one day. I really do. I really do. After I seen a clip of Joe Budden mentioning that Tyler Perry is not a good guy, and I'm like, that's crazy. So you believe the victim here, but you think that Meg was lying? Wow. Like, are we gonna pick a side, or are we going to like? But that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not about figuring out what's right. It's about, how am I going to deflect and project whatever kinds of discomforts I'm experiencing, so that I don't have to be accountable for myself, but rather, in the best misery loves company fashion, devalue anyone else that can perpetuate the lifestyle that I would otherwise admire if I felt like I could get there. But that's just that's just my take. It's just how I feel. So while I'm figuring this life thing out, I hope you guys are having an extraordinary day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye. Did I flick my glasses?